So like when you're running for president, is there like a benefit? Is it because that there's already been this built of this base being built upon that, you have to be Republican or Democrat to make it into office, and that's why someone kind of chooses Democrat Republican? Why couldn't, someone go through the system or try to become president that has beliefs that could, you know, uh, in particular help everybody
Yeah.
rather than just one side?
So if I could have voted in 2016, I probably would have voted for Gary Johnson, just because I think a lot of people were in that same boat. They were saying, I don't like Donald Trump, I don't like Hillary Clinton, and a lot of people were either forced to vote for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton because they're the best of,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily like a precedent thing where somebody has to run as a Democrat or Republican. It's just simply the way that our system is laid out. So in a presidential race specifically, you have to win 270 electoral votes in the electoral college
Right.
to win the presidency. And if you get less than that, you don't win. And so that's why I think, let's see, 270 is half of the amount of electoral points that you can get.
Right.
And so if other people start getting electoral points, then their candidate isn't going to win. And so it's a two-person race type thing.
Right.
That's why, like, I think that Donald Trump in 2016, he said that if he didn't win the nomination, that he would run as an independent candidate. And essentially what that does is if somebody runs as an independent candidate, or if somebody runs as like a Green Party candidate or a Communist Party candidate or a Libertarian candidate or an independent candidate, is you take away the votes from either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and you're taking away the electoral votes from one of those two parties. And so they won't be able to get to that 270 vote threshold, but the other party can.
Right.
And so if somebody like Bernie Sanders, who is technically considered an independent, who doesn't, he still caucuses and votes with the Democrats, but he's technically not a Democrat. If he ran as an independent against the Democratic candidate, let's say Joe Biden this year, he would take away votes from Joe Biden. And because we have this winner-take-all system, Donald Trump would be the benefactor here if Bernie Sanders ran as an independent candidate.
Right.
And so it's more of a systematic thing on why we have a two-party system in the United States rather than more of like a precedent thing, if that makes sense.
So like, don't you think that's kind of all BS when it comes to that? Like, because I feel like people are choosing a side of a party because, like you said, it will benefit them in the long run because those people are already there, and you're like, oh, I'm Democrat, and then you'll get a portion of those Democrats rather than being like, I'm independent, where you have such a smaller pool. So, do you think that we should maybe move to something like a popular vote system rather than just be like a just Republican Democrat kind of thing, or like, I don't know.
It's very hard to say. There's been tons of debates on whether or not we should have a big systemic overhaul of our system right now. I mean, we're pretty much one of the only liberal democracies that has this winner-take-all electoral college system. Like I said, in parliamentary systems like the UK, we have tons of different parties, right? So uh, you have the social conservatives, you have the liberal Democrats. I mean, you have tons of different factions and different parties, and these people get elected to parliament. And essentially, you have to have 50% of the vote in parliament to pass a law in parliament.
Right.
And so typically, like, the social conservatives are the majority in the parliament right now in the UK, but they don't have over that 50% threshold to actually sign things into law. And so what they have to do is they have to form coalitions to form a government to get over that 50% percent threshold. So we have multiple different candidates from multiple different parties that represent different people and different populations in the population, which is a fantastic thing. And they all have to come together to compromise on a piece of legislation that over 50% of the people in that parliament agree with. That's not necessarily the case in the United States, right? We have the Republicans, we have the Democrats,
Right.
and it seems like there's no compromise here. Whoever has the majority over 50% in the House or in the Senate, they get their way. There's no
Right.
compromising with the other side. If you have a majority, that's how it's going to be. So the question, do I think that we should move to something like a national popular vote rather than what we have now? I'm not sure. It's very hard to say. I think that it would have significant impact, and I don't know whether or not it's good or bad. Here's the thing. Here's what I'm scared about. If we do like a national popular vote, it kind of depends on how we do it. So if we were to say that, like, let's say there's 30 candidates running, right? We have like Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. We have all of the main popular ones, and then we have a whole bunch of other different ones, right? I think you said that you watched the Democratic debates, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, there's tons of there was like 22 or 23 Democratic candidates at the beginning of this race. Let's say that they were all running for president, or and we had tons of different
You're good.
we had tons of different Republicans running. So you have 30, 40 different candidates. So how are we going to decide which one wins? Is it going to be the person who gets the most votes? That could mean that a candidate could get elected with 5 or 6% of the vote.
That's also true. Correct.
That would be bad.
Right.
So we might be able to do like a runoff situation where like the top two or top three get left at the end of the vote, and then people vote on them. It's hard to say whether or not that would be a better system.
Right.
This is the problem with politics, I think, is it's such a complex issue that I mean, we have 300 million people in the United States. Try and get all of them to get along. It just doesn't work very well.
Exactly.
So what system is going to grant the most representation to the most amount of people? And there's not a clear answer. I think that with the direct vote, there would need to be a lot of work on how it's actually going to happen compared to the electoral college that we have now, but I think it has some potential.
Right.
There's lots of different studies.